stop whatever you're doing. Because if you're over 40 and you wake up every morning feeling stiff, foggy, exhausted before your day even starts, that is not a normal part of aging. That is the result of a morning routine that is working against your biology instead of with it. Here's what the data shows. After 40, the human body enters what scientists call accelerated metabolic drift. Testosterone declines at roughly 1% per year, growth hormone secretion drops dramatically, cortisol rhythms dysregulate, and mitochondrial efficiency starts falling. For most people in the West, morning habits, screens immediately, processed breakfast, no movement, coffee on an empty stomach, make every single one of these shifts dramatically worse. And they do it before 9 a.m. Japan tells a different story. Japan has one of the lowest rates of age-related disease in the world. Japanese adults over 40 maintain metabolic markers that American adults in their 30s can't match. And Japanese adults over 60 routinely outperform their Western counterparts in physical function tests, cognitive assessments, and inflammatory biomarkers. This is not genetics. Japanese Americans living Western lifestyles develop the same chronic diseases as other Americans at similar rates. The difference is the daily habits. Specifically, the morning habits. So if you are over 40, and you want to rebuild your metabolism, restore your hormonal balance, reclaim your energy, and make your body biologically younger starting before breakfast, these are the 25 Japanese morning habits that science now confirms do exactly that. Let's count them down. Number 25. Heiaoki, the Japanese practice of rising early. And this is where the entire morning blueprint begins. Japan has a cultural proverb, Heiaoki wa sanmon no toku. Rising early earns 3 coins of profit. But what it actually earns, biologically, is far more valuable than money. Waking early, consistently, before 6 a.m., aligns your cortisol awakening response with the natural light cycle, and that alignment is one of the most important hormonal events of your entire day. After 40, cortisol rhythms are among the first systems to dysregulate. The cortisol awakening response. The natural spike of cortisol that occurs in the 30 to 45 minutes after waking, is supposed to be your body's natural energizing mechanism. It mobilizes glucose for brain function, activates immune surveillance, and sets the timing of your entire circadian rhythm for the day. Research published in Psych Neuroendocrinology found that individuals who woke consistently early had a more robust, healthier cortisol awakening response, better cognitive performance through the day, and lower baseline evening cortisol, the kind that disrupts sleep and promotes belly fat storage. Japan's elderly population, among the most functionally capable in the world, wakes early not because they must, but because their culture built it into the structure of daily life. Heiaoki is the first habit. Without it, none of the habits that follow can be properly timed or fully activated. Habit 24, morning warm water, activating the body before anything else. Number 24. The very first thing that enters a traditional Japanese body each morning is not coffee. It's not juice. It's warm water, 1 or 2 glasses, drunk slowly, before food, before tea, before anything else. This practice, called hakusen in some Japanese traditions, seems deceptively simple. But the physiology it triggers is significant, particularly for bodies over 40 where digestive efficiency and metabolic flexibility begin to decline. Here's what happens when warm water hits your fasted digestive system first thing in the morning. After 7 to 8 hours of sleep, your intestinal walls are in a low motility state. Warm water, not cold, stimulates peristalsis, the wave-like muscular contractions that move waste through your intestine. Your liver, which has been processing metabolic debris and hormonal waste overnight, is ready to release that waste into the digestive tract. Warm water accelerates that clearance before anything else enters the system and competes for digestive resources. A 2020 review in the Journal of Nutritional Science confirmed that morning warm water intake enhanced gastric motility significantly more than cold water, reducing intestinal transit time and improving bowel regularity in older adults. Faster transit means less reabsorption of endotoxins, bacterial toxins from gut bacteria that, when recirculated into the bloodstream, drive systemic inflammation. After 40, when gut permeability increases and endotoxin recirculation becomes more common, this morning ritual performs meaningful daily maintenance on the system that regulates your metabolism, immunity, and energy. Habit 23, Morning Sunlight Exposure, Resetting the Master Clock After 40. Number 23. Morning sunlight. Not through a window. Outside, eyes open, face toward the light, within the first 30 minutes of waking. And this habit may be the single most powerful free intervention available to anyone over 40 for restoring hormonal and metabolic health. Japan's traditional morning culture involves stepping outside early. Walking to the station, tending a garden, practicing morning exercises in the open air. This wasn't designed as light therapy. It was simply life before cars and cubicles made the outdoors optional. But the biology it activated is now the subject of intense scientific study. Here's the mechanism. The suprachiasmatic nucleus in your hypothalamus, your body's master biological clock, is set each morning by a specific wavelength of light, shortwave blue light from the early morning sun. This signal initiates a precise cascade. Melatonin is suppressed, cortisol rises appropriately, serotonin production ramps up, and the 24-hour timing of your testosterone, growth hormone, and metabolic hormone rhythms is calibrated for the day. After 40, this cascade weakens significantly in people who spend their mornings indoors under artificial light. Research from the Salk Institute found that morning light exposure directly influenced metabolic gene expression in every organ system, including genes governing fat metabolism, insulin sensitivity, and cellular repair. Dr. Andrew Huberman's work at Stanford further documented that just 10 minutes of morning outdoor light exposure dramatically improved sleep quality, cortisol timing, and metabolic function across all age groups. Japan built this into their mornings instinctively. Science explains precisely why those mornings were protecting their biology. Number 22. Radio Taiso. And this is one of the most underrated anti-aging morning practices on this entire list. Radio Taiso is Japan's national morning exercise broadcast, a 10-minute sequence of gentle calisthenics movements originally broadcast over the radio starting in 1928 and still transmitted daily. Schools, offices, and community parks across Japan gather every morning to perform these coordinated movements together. Millions of Japanese adults over 40, 50, 60, and beyond do this every single day. It looks modest. The biology it triggers is anything but. After 40, two physical processes accelerate simultaneously: sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass at roughly 1% per year, and reduced joint lubrication as synovial fluid production decreases. The slow, deliberate movements of Radio Taiso address both. Every joint in the body is moved through its full range of motion. Every major muscle group is gently activated. And this activation, performed immediately after waking, triggers the release of myokines, hormone-like compounds secreted by contracting muscle that reduce systemic inflammation and support metabolic function. Research published in the Journal of Physical Therapy Science confirmed that regular Radio Taiso participation in older Japanese adults significantly improved flexibility, balance, and functional strength scores compared to age-matched non-participants. And crucially, 10 minutes of morning movement activates AMPK, the metabolic master switch, increasing fat oxidation and insulin sensitivity for hours afterward. Japan doesn't call this exercise. They call it morning preparation. And preparation is exactly what it provides, to a body that needs it more after 40 than it ever did before. Number 21. Cold water on the face immediately after waking. Not a cold shower, just the face. And the neurological effect this produces in the first minutes of your morning is extraordinary. In Japan, the practice of splashing cold water on the face each morning is so common it barely registers as a health habit, it's simply what you do. But the physiological mechanism behind it connects directly to one of the most important nervous system structures in the human body, the vagus nerve. Cold water applied to the face, particularly around the eyes, nose, and cheeks, triggers the diving reflex, a hardwired mammalian response that activates the parasympathetic nervous system through the vagus nerve. Heart rate slows briefly. Blood pressure normalizes. The prefrontal cortex receives increased blood flow. And vagal tone. The measure of your vagus nerve's baseline activity increases. Here's why this matters so specifically after 40. Vagal tone declines with age. And low vagal tone is associated with higher resting heart rate, increased inflammatory markers, poorer emotional regulation, and greater cardiovascular risk. Research published in Frontiers in Neuroscience found that brief cold water face immersion significantly increased heart rate variability, the gold standard measure of vagal tone. Within minutes of application. High heart rate variability is one of the most reliable biological markers of healthy aging. Japan starts every morning by stimulating the nerve that governs it. Before the coffee is even made. Number 20. Matcha. And if you are over 40 and still drinking coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, this is the habit most urgently worth replacing. Coffee on an empty stomach, consumed immediately upon waking, spikes cortisol at a time when cortisol is already naturally rising through its awakening response. After 40, when cortisol regulation becomes less precise and adrenal sensitivity increases, this cortisol-on-cortisol layering contributes to what researchers describe as HPA axis dysregulation. A chronic state of mild adrenal stress that promotes belly fat storage, disrupts sleep, increases insulin resistance, and accelerates the metabolic decline already underway after 40. Japan's morning drink is matcha, the whole-leaf powdered green tea that delivers EGCG, chlorophyll, and the highest natural concentration of L-theanine of any food. L-theanine crosses the blood-brain barrier and increases alpha brain wave activity, the calm focus state associated with meditation, while simultaneously reducing cortisol output. The caffeine in matcha, delivered in a lower dose than coffee and modulated by L-theanine, produces alert energy without the cortisol spike, the anxiety, or the mid-morning crash. Research published in Biological Psychology confirmed that L-theanine combined with caffeine, the exact combination found in matcha, produced significantly better cognitive performance and significantly lower cortisol response compared to caffeine alone. After 40, your adrenal system needs a morning energizer that works with your hormonal architecture, not against it. Matcha is that energizer. Japan has known this for centuries. Your morning cortisol profile now has the science to confirm it. Habit 19, miso soup at breakfast, seeding the gut before the day begins. Number 19. Miso soup at breakfast. Not at dinner. At breakfast. And the timing of this habit is as important as the habit itself. In traditional Japanese households, the day begins with a bowl of miso soup. Warm, savory, probiotic-rich, and mineral-dense, before rice, before fish, before anything else except water. And the reason this matters so specifically for bodies over 40 is what happens to the gut microbiome as we age. After 40, gut microbiome diversity begins a measurable decline. Beneficial lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains reduce in number. Populations of pro-inflammatory bacteria increase. Intestinal permeability, the leakiness that allows bacterial toxins into the bloodstream, rises. And the consequences are systemic: increased inflammatory markers, worsening insulin resistance, declining immune function, and accelerating cognitive aging. Miso, a living fermented food containing lactobacillus probiotic strains alongside prebiotic fibers, digestive enzymes, isoflavones, and minerals. Delivered first thing in the morning enters a gut that is empty, receptive, and primed for colonization. Research from Japan's National Cancer Center documented that regular miso consumers had significantly lower rates of gastric disease and maintained superior gut microbiome diversity into late age. Consuming miso at breakfast, before the digestive system is occupied with processing other food, may optimize probiotic delivery to a gut that, after 40, is more dependent on that daily reseed than it has ever been. Habit 18, natto at breakfast, repairing the arteries while the body is fasted. Number 18. Natto at breakfast. And the timing here, consuming natto in the fasted morning state, matters biologically in ways most people haven't considered. Natto is fermented soybeans containing two compounds found in no other significant dietary source, natto kinase and vitamin K2 as -7 Malawian kwachas. Both work on the cardiovascular system. And both work best when delivered into a fasted body whose digestive enzymes are fully primed and whose bloodstream is not competing with a heavy food load. After 40, cardiovascular risk accelerates significantly. Arterial stiffness increases as elastin fibers degrade. Fibrin, the clot-forming protein, accumulates more readily in blood vessels as fibrinolytic activity naturally declines. And arterial calcium deposits, a direct marker of plaque and cardiovascular aging, begin to appear in imaging studies at dramatically higher rates after 40 in Western populations. Japan's natto breakfast addresses all three simultaneously. Natto kinase, studied in research published in Clinical Hemorrheology and Microcirculation, significantly reduces blood viscosity and fibrin accumulation. Vitamin K2 activates matrix GLA protein, which removes calcium from arterial walls and directs it into bone. And a meta-analysis in cardiovascular research confirmed that regular natto kinase intake produced meaningful reductions in blood pressure. Eating natto at breakfast, when the digestive system is unencumbered and absorption is at its most efficient, delivers these cardiovascular protective compounds exactly when the body can best utilize them. Habit 17, the Japanese breakfast plate, protein first, processed food never. Number 17. The structure of the traditional Japanese breakfast itself. Because what Japan puts on the table in the morning is one of the most metabolically sophisticated meals in any food culture on earth, even though it doesn't look like it. A traditional Japanese breakfast typically includes grilled fish or a small portion of protein, a bowl of rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables, and sometimes a piece of seaweed or a soft egg. No cereal. No pastry. No orange juice loaded with fructose. No processed anything. And the metabolic effect of this protein-forward, low-glycemic, high-variety breakfast compared to the typical Western morning meal is dramatic. After 40, the anabolic response to dietary protein weakens, a phenomenon called anabolic resistance. Your muscles become less efficient at absorbing and using dietary protein for maintenance and repair. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that consuming 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein at breakfast, rather than concentrating protein at dinner as most Westerners do, significantly improved muscle protein synthesis rates throughout the day, particularly in adults over 40. Japan's morning fish provides complete protein alongside omega-3 fatty acids that reduce the inflammatory environment suppressing anabolic signaling. The low glycemic nature of the meal keeps morning insulin stable, preventing the cortisol spiking blood sugar crash that follows a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast. And the variety, multiple small dishes from multiple food sources, begins the daily dietary diversity count that feeds microbiome richness. Japan doesn't eat breakfast for convenience. They eat it for biology. And the biology shows. Habit 16, morning ginger tea, anti-inflammatory medicine before the day starts. Number 16. Ginger tea in the morning. Steeped fresh, consumed warm, before or after breakfast. And the decision to consume ginger in the fasted or early morning state is not arbitrary. It targets the inflammatory window that opens every night during sleep and peaks in the early morning. In Japan, ginger is consumed at virtually every meal, in soups, alongside fish, pickled as beni shoga, steeped into tea. But the morning consumption is specifically important because of what happens to inflammatory markers overnight. During sleep, your body processes cellular debris, clears metabolic waste, and runs immune surveillance. Some of this produces low-level inflammatory signaling that naturally peaks in the early morning hours, which is why heart attacks, strokes, and asthma attacks occur most frequently between 6 and 10 a.m. Ginger's bioactive compounds, gingerols and shogales, inhibit NF-kappa B, the master inflammatory transcription factor, and suppress COX-2, the enzyme targeted by ibuprofen. A meta-analysis in phytotherapy research found that daily ginger supplementation significantly reduced CRP, TNF-alpha, and IL-6 across 16 randomized trials. Consuming this anti-inflammatory compound first thing in the morning, directly into a fasted, empty stomach where absorption is maximal, targets the peak inflammatory window with peak bioavailability. After 40, when chronic low-grade inflammation becomes the dominant driver of metabolic decline, this is not a small intervention. It is a daily pharmaceutical-level anti-inflammatory strategy delivered in a cup of tea. Habit 15, Morning Seaweed, feeding the thyroid that runs your metabolism. Number 15. Seaweed at breakfast. In the miso soup, crumbled over rice, eaten as a side, and specifically important for anyone over 40 whose thyroid function may be quietly declining. After 40, thyroid function is one of the most commonly compromised hormonal systems in the human body, affecting an estimated 20% of women over 40 and increasing proportions of men. A sluggish thyroid means a slower metabolic rate, lower body temperature, reduced cellular energy production, poorer intestinal motility, and impaired detoxification capacity. Most people experiencing this are never diagnosed because their thyroid hormone levels are technically normal, just in the lower end of the reference range. Iodine is the rate-limiting nutrient for thyroid hormone production. Your thyroid cannot make T3 or T4 without it. And iodine deficiency is the most common nutritional deficiency globally, almost entirely absent from modern Western breakfast tables. Japan's seaweed provides dietary iodine in its most bioavailable natural form, alongside the mineral cofactors selenium and zinc that activate the conversion of thyroid hormone from its storage form T4 to its active form T3. Research published in Thyroid Journal documented significantly higher thyroid function markers and lower rates of autoimmune thyroid disease in Japanese adults compared to Western populations with similar demographic profiles. A difference researchers attributed substantially to dietary iodine intake from seaweed. Consuming seaweed at breakfast, the meal that sets your metabolic rate for the first half of the day, delivers the precise mineral your thyroid needs at the precise moment it is calibrating your day's energy output. Number 14. Eating slowly. At breakfast specifically. And this is a habit that most people over 40 have completely abandoned in the name of efficiency. At the precise biological cost they can least afford. In Japan, breakfast is not eaten standing up over the sink. It is not consumed in a car. It is not skipped. It is sat down for, plated with care, and eaten with attention. Chopsticks, small bowls, and cultural reverence for the meal all enforce a pace that activates the most critical and most overlooked phase of digestion, the cephalic phase. The cephalic phase digestive response is the brain-initiated preparatory cascade that begins when you see, smell, and consciously engage with your food. Saliva production doubles. Gastric acid secretion begins. Digestive enzyme output from the pancreas initiates. Bile is prepared by the liver. This entire cascade takes several minutes of mindful engagement. And after 40, when digestive enzyme production has already begun its natural age-related decline, this preparatory phase becomes more critical, not less. Research in the American Journal of Gastroenterology documented that slow eating reduced gastrointestinal symptoms by over 40% and significantly improved macronutrient absorption efficiency in older adults. A study in the BMJ found that fast eaters were 5.5 times more likely to develop metabolic syndrome. Japan eats breakfast slowly because the morning is not rushed, it is begun intentionally. After 40, every unit of nutrient absorption efficiency matters. Slow down. Your digestive system after 40 will deliver more from less, but only if you give it the time to prepare. Habit 13, no phone for the first 30 minutes, protecting morning cortisol architecture. Number 13. No phone for the first 30 minutes of the morning. And in Japan's traditional morning culture, this practice exists not through digital discipline but through cultural architecture, a morning that was filled with ritual before screens ever existed to compete with it. Here's the biology of what checking your phone immediately upon waking does to your body after 40. Your cortisol awakening response, the natural hormone surge that is supposed to energize you, sharpen your cognition, and calibrate your immune system for the day, peaks in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking. This surge requires a calm, gradual sensory ramp-up to function correctly. It was calibrated by evolution for soft morning light, gentle sound, and slow physical awakening. Exposure to social media, email, and news within the first minutes of waking triggers threat detection circuits in the amygdala, producing an additional cortisol spike that collides with the natural awakening response. The result is a dysregulated cortisol pattern that, according to research published in Social Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience, is associated with higher all-day anxiety, poorer working memory, increased inflammatory markers, and disrupted sleep the following night. After 40, when HPA axis regulation is already less robust, this daily morning cortisol collision contributes meaningfully to the hormonal dysregulation driving fatigue, weight gain, and cognitive decline. Japan's morning rituals, water, sunlight, taiso, miso, matcha, fill the first 30 to 60 minutes with physical and sensory engagement that is incompatible with screen use. That's not coincidence. It's biological protection. The morning mind belongs to the body first. Habit 12, morning floor stretching, Junin Taiso and the fascia connection. Number 12. Junin Taiso, Japanese flexibility exercises performed on the floor, first thing in the morning. And this is the morning habit that addresses the one physical change after 40 that affects everything else, the progressive stiffening of the body's facial system. Fascia is the continuous web of connective tissue that surrounds every muscle, organ, nerve, and blood vessel in your body. In your 20s and 30s, fascia is well hydrated, elastic, and responsive. After 40, fascia begins to dehydrate, thicken, and develop adhesions, particularly in areas of chronic tension or inactivity. The result is the morning stiffness that most people over 40 dismiss as just getting older. It is getting older, but it is also profoundly addressable. During sleep, you are immobile for 7 to 8 hours. Facial tissue thickens slightly during this stillness. The morning is the optimal window to rehydrate and mobilize facial tissue before it sets into the patterns of your sitting posture, your habitual tensions, and your physical compensations. Japanese Junin Taiso. Slow, sustained floor movements that take each joint through full range, mechanically loads the facial network, stimulating fibroblasts to remodel collagen and improve tissue hydration. Research in the Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies found that 10 minutes of morning flexibility work significantly reduced all-day pain scores and improved afternoon physical performance in adults over 45. Japan builds this into every morning through both radio taiso and individual floor practices. Your fascia is rebuilt while you move it. Move it first thing. Every morning. Habit 11, morning walking, activating fat metabolism before the first meal. Number 11. Morning walking. Specifically, walking before or shortly after a light breakfast, and in Japan, the infrastructure of daily life makes this almost unavoidable. The walk to the train station. The stroll to the local market. The unhurried path through a neighborhood park, after 40, fasting fat oxidation. Your body's ability to burn stored fat for energy during periods between meals, is one of the first metabolic capacities to decline. Insulin sensitivity decreases, glucose becomes the preferred fuel, and the metabolic flexibility that allows your body to switch smoothly between carbohydrate and fat burning diminishes. The result is the mid-morning energy crash, the reliance on constant snacking, and the progressive accumulation of visceral fat that characterizes metabolic aging. Morning walking, particularly in a semi-fasted or lightly fed state, directly targets this. When you walk in the morning before a large carbohydrate load, your muscles draw on fat-derived fuel. Over time, this trains mitochondria to become more efficient fat oxidizers. A study published in the Journal of Physiology found that morning fasted or semi-fasted exercise produced significantly greater improvements in fat oxidation capacity and insulin sensitivity compared to the same exercise performed later in the day after meals. Japan does not send its population to the gym at 6 a.m. It simply designed morning life so that walking is the path of least resistance. The result, measured in population-wide metabolic health statistics, is one of the most compelling arguments for rethinking how you begin every morning after 40. Number 10. Kansha, the Japanese concept of gratitude and appreciation. And yes, a morning gratitude practice is on this list. Not for philosophical reasons. For precise hormonal ones. In Japan, Kansha is expressed through ritual, the brief moment of reflection before eating, itadakimasu, the appreciation of the season in the garden, the acknowledgement of the craftsperson in the tool you use. These are not grand emotional exercises. They are small, habitual micro-moments of appreciation woven into the texture of every morning. And the neuroendocrine effect of these moments, studied through the lens of modern psychoneuroimmunology, is measurable and meaningful. Genuine gratitude, even brief, habitual gratitude, reduces amygdala activation and attenuates the cortisol response to perceived threat. Research from the HeartMath Institute documented that a sustained positive emotional state, achieved through appreciation practices, produced rapid and measurable improvements in heart rate variability, the measure of nervous system balance and vagal tone. After 40, when chronic cortisol dysregulation is a primary driver of belly fat, sleep disruption, and immune decline, a morning practice that actively lowers the cortisol set point is not soft wellness. It is hormonal medicine. A study from UC Davis found that participants practicing brief morning gratitude had significantly lower urinary cortisol output throughout the day, better sleep quality, and lower inflammatory marker levels at 8-week follow-up. Japan doesn't journal its gratitude. It lives it, in the pause before the meal, in the notice of morning light. That pause, repeated every morning, quietly reshapes the hormonal environment of the entire day. Habit 9. Fermented vegetables at breakfast. The morning microbiome reset. Number 9. Fermented vegetables at breakfast. Tsukmono, Japan's traditional pickled and fermented vegetable preparations, appear on the Japanese morning table as reliably as the miso soup. And delivering live fermented cultures into the gut in the morning, before the microbiome has been challenged by the day's food load, is a strategically important timing choice. After 40, the gut microbiome undergoes a measurable compositional shift toward dysbiosis. An imbalance in which pro-inflammatory bacterial strains proliferate as beneficial lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species decline. This shift is associated with increased intestinal permeability, worsening insulin resistance, rising inflammatory markers, and a gradual decline in the production of short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate, that the colon cells depend on for fuel and repair. Japan delivers fermented food at breakfast. When the gut is empty, pH conditions are most favorable for probiotic colonization, and no competing food has yet altered the intestinal environment. Tsukamoto varieties provide diverse bacterial strains from diverse fermentation substrates, seeding microbiome richness from the very first meal of the day. After 40, the gut needs its morning reseed more urgently than ever. Japan provides it before 8 a.m. Habit 8, zazen or morning stillness, the 5-minute nervous system reset. Number 8. Zazen. seated meditation, or simply a period of quiet morning stillness. Japan's Buddhist traditions have embedded periods of deliberate morning silence into the culture for over 1,000 years. And what happens in the nervous system during those minutes is one of the most well-documented biological interventions in modern neuroscience. After 40, the autonomic nervous system's balance tips progressively toward sympathetic dominance, the fight-or-flight state. This is driven by declining sex hormones, accumulating life stress, poor sleep, and the chronic low-grade inflammation that characterizes metabolic aging. A body stuck in sympathetic dominance cannot repair efficiently. Digestion is suppressed. Immune regulation is impaired. Cellular regeneration slows. And every other morning habit on this list is less effective when performed in a body whose nervous system is already on high alert. Just 5 to 10 minutes of morning stillness. Eyes closed, breathing slow, attention inward, activates the parasympathetic nervous system through vagal pathways. Cortisol drops. Heart rate variability increases. Prefrontal cortex activity improves. Research from Massachusetts General Hospital, using neuroimaging in long-term meditators, found measurably greater gray matter density in regions governing emotional regulation and attentional control compared to non-meditators. Effects that were present even in practitioners with as little as 8 weeks of practice. A 2014 study in JAMA Internal Medicine found that mindfulness meditation significantly reduced inflammatory cytokines and stress markers in adults over 45. Japan's morning stillness is not passive. It is the physiological preparation that makes every other morning habit that follows it more effective. Habit 7, Morning Tofu, plant protein and isoflavones for hormonal support after 40. Number 7. Tofu at breakfast. A soft block of silken tofu, a side of cold firm tofu dressed simply with soy and ginger, or cubed tofu in the morning miso. Japan incorporates tofu into the morning meal with a frequency that Western nutrition has only recently begun to understand as pharmacologically significant for the over 40 body. After 40, sex hormone decline accelerates. In women, estrogen begins its menopausal trajectory. In men, testosterone falls at roughly 1% per year while estradiol, the form of estrogen produced from testosterone, becomes disproportionately elevated, contributing to increased visceral fat, reduced muscle mass, and worsening insulin sensitivity. In both sexes, this hormonal shift creates a metabolic environment that requires strategic dietary support. Soy isoflavones, genistein and daidzein, are phytoestrogens that interact with estrogen receptors as selective modulators, producing antiestrogenic effects in tissues where estrogen excess is harmful and supportive effects where estrogen is needed for bone and cardiovascular health. Research from the Japan Public Health Center-based prospective study found that high soy isoflavone intake was associated with significantly lower rates of ischemic stroke and lower cardiovascular mortality, particularly in perimenopausal and postmenopausal women. Japan averages 25 to 50 milligrams of isoflavones per day through soy foods. Western adults consume less than 2 milligrams. That 25-fold difference, delivered every morning at breakfast for decades, produces measurably different hormonal environments, and measurably different health outcomes, in the bodies that live with them. Habit 6, Morning hydration with mineral-rich water, electrolytes before caffeine. Number 6. Deliberate, mineral-aware morning hydration. Japan's traditional water sources, mountain spring water naturally rich in silica, magnesium, and trace minerals, were part of the morning routine long before mineral water became a marketing category. And the reason minerals matter specifically in the morning, specifically after 40, is both physiological and chronobiological. Overnight, your body loses significant fluid through respiration and sweating, up to 500 milliliters in 8 hours of sleep. It also produces metabolic waste that requires aqueous transport for elimination through the kidneys. Waking dehydrated, as most adults do, suppresses morning kidney function, reduces blood volume, and impairs the morning cortisol awakening response that depends on adequate plasma volume to circulate properly. After 40, magnesium deficiency becomes increasingly prevalent because dietary intake of magnesium-rich foods declines and gut absorption efficiency decreases. Yet magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic reactions, including the production of ATP in mitochondria, the regulation of blood pressure, insulin receptor signaling, and the conversion of cortisol to its inactive form. Research published in Nutrients found that magnesium deficiency was significantly associated with higher inflammatory markers, greater insulin resistance, and worse metabolic syndrome outcomes in adults over 40. Japan's morning warm water ritual rehydrates the overnight depleted body with electrolytes before caffeine enters the system. Start the morning depleted and every subsequent habit functions at a deficit. Japan starts hydrated, and builds from that foundation. Number 5. Kaizen. Japan's philosophy of continuous small improvement, and the way it shapes the morning routine in ways that directly protect the metabolic health of people over 40. Kaizen in its morning expression is simple. Each day, each morning, you improve the previous one by a fraction. Wake 5 minutes earlier. Add one stretch. Prepare one better ingredient. This isn't ambition, it's the biological opposite of helplessness. And helplessness, in the psychological research literature, is one of the most potent drivers of chronic cortisol elevation and accelerated biological aging. Research from the Stanford Mind and Body Lab, led by psychologist Alia Crum, demonstrated that the perception of control over one's health, the belief that your actions meaningfully affect your biology, produced measurably different cortisol responses, immune outcomes, and even hormonal profiles compared to a fixed mindset about aging and health. Kaizen instills that sense of agency structurally, through the morning ritual of small, visible improvement. Here's what most people don't realize. After 40, the biological changes your body undergoes are real, but the rate at which they progress is enormously modifiable. Research consistently shows that lifestyle interventions in the 40s produce greater relative health gains than at any other life stage, precisely because the gap between trajectory and potential is largest. Kaizen is the philosophy that closes that gap, one morning at a time. Japan didn't build the world's most efficient industries with massive overhauls. They built them with daily, incremental improvements. Your biology works the same way. Habit 4, morning sunlight on skin, vitamin D and the anti-inflammatory hormone. Number 4. Morning sunlight on skin, not just the face, but exposed arms and legs when weather allows. And this is one of the most critical morning habits for anyone over 40 who has never had their vitamin D level tested. Vitamin D deficiency is now estimated to affect over 40% of American adults and up to 70% of adults over 70. Yet vitamin D is not merely a vitamin. It functions as a steroid hormone, binding to vitamin D receptors on virtually every cell in the human body: immune cells, muscle cells, pancreatic beta cells, neurons, and cardiac muscle. Its role in regulating inflammation, insulin secretion, muscle strength, neurotransmitter synthesis, and cellular differentiation makes it one of the most broadly important biological regulators in the entire human system. Japan's traditional morning culture, outdoor radio taiso in open parks, walking to the station, gardening before the workday, provided daily skin sun exposure at the precise time of day when UVB rays are most efficiently converted to vitamin D3 in the skin. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that vitamin D3 from sun exposure was significantly more bioavailable and longer-lasting in the body than vitamin D taken as an oral supplement. A meta-analysis in the BMJ found that vitamin D sufficiency was associated with 40% lower cardiovascular event risk, significantly lower all-cause mortality, and meaningfully better muscle function in adults over 50. Japan doesn't supplement vitamin D at scale. Japan goes outside in the morning. The skin does the rest. Habit 3, morning social connection, the oxytocin that protects your arteries. Number 3. A brief moment of genuine social connection in the morning. A neighbor greeted on the walk. A family member acknowledged before the day separates everyone. The communal radio taiso in the park. And this is the morning habit that Western productivity culture most aggressively discourages, to significant biological cost. Japan's morning culture is communal in ways that disappear rapidly in car-dependent, bedroom community Western life. People walk through the same streets. They pass the same temple. They see the same faces. These brief, low-intensity social interactions, a bow, a greeting, a shared minute of exercise, produce a specific neurochemical response that has profound implications for metabolic health, the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, does something critically important for anyone over 40, it directly suppresses cortisol. Research published in Psych Neuroendocrinology found that oxytocin administration reduced cortisol output and lowered blood pressure in adults experiencing stress, with effects significantly greater in older adults than younger ones. Morning oxytocin, delivered through even brief positive social contact, sets a lower cortisol baseline for the entire day. A lower morning cortisol baseline means less visceral fat deposition, better insulin sensitivity, more stable energy through the morning, and better sleep that night. The Brigham Young meta-analysis documented a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality associated with strong social connection. Japan begins building that connection before 8 a.m. That early morning hello is not small talk. It is your first hormonal intervention of the day. Habit 2, Morning Intention Setting. The prefrontal activation that changes everything. Number 2. Morning Intention Setting. Not journaling as a trend. Not an elaborate ritual. Simply, before the day begins, before the demands arrive, before the reactive mind takes over, a clear, conscious decision about how you intend to show up. In Japan, this takes several forms. The concept of kakugo, mental readiness and resolve, is practiced across professions and traditions. The brief moment of stillness before breakfast. The conscious donning of work clothes as a ritual of mental preparation. The morning words exchanged in a family that set the tone for the hours ahead. These are not emotional exercises. They are prefrontal cortex activations. After 40, the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for planning, emotional regulation, decision-making, and inhibitory control, begins a gradual structural decline. Gray matter density decreases. Synaptic connectivity reduces. The result is greater susceptibility to reactive decision-making, emotional dysregulation under stress, and the cognitive fog that many over 40 adults chalk up to inevitable aging. Research from the University of Toronto found that deliberate morning intention setting produced measurably greater prefrontal activation and significantly better decision quality and stress resilience throughout the day compared to days begun reactively. After 40, every morning begun with conscious intention exercises and protects the precise cognitive architecture you most need to preserve. Japan's morning culture makes intention a ritual. Your biology needs it to be one too. Habit 1, the complete Japanese morning, when all 25 habits work together. Number 1. The integration. Because none of these habits exists in isolation in Japan, and that is precisely what makes Japan's morning the most powerful anti-aging protocol ever designed. A traditional Japanese morning flows like this. You wake early, to natural light beginning to enter the room. You drink warm water before anything else. You step outside briefly into morning sunlight while perhaps joining a few minutes of community radio taiso. You return inside, splash cold water on your face. You sit for a few minutes in stillness. You prepare a simple breakfast, miso soup with a small piece of fish or tofu, tsukmono on the side, a bowl of rice, a cup of matcha. And you eat it slowly, with gratitude, perhaps with family. Before you reach for your phone, before the day's demands have arrived, your body has already received everything it needs to function optimally: hydration, movement, light, warmth, cold, stillness, fermented cultures, anti-inflammatory compounds, thyroid minerals, hormonal support, protein, and connection. Here's what most people don't realize about why this works so profoundly after 40. Every one of these habits targets a specific mechanism that is in active decline after 40: mitochondrial efficiency, hormonal rhythm, gut microbiome diversity, inflammatory regulation, facial mobility, vagal tone, cortisol architecture, vitamin D status, and prefrontal resilience. Japan's morning doesn't address one. It addresses all of them. Simultaneously. Before 9 a.m. Every single day. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that lifestyle interventions targeting multiple age-related mechanisms simultaneously produce synergistic, non-additive benefits, meaning the whole is biologically greater than the sum of its parts. Japan's morning routine is not a list of habits. It is a precisely calibrated biological system tested on 126 million people across generations. With results visible in every longevity metric and every centenarian walking the streets of Okinawa at 101. Here's the truth that no supplement bottle, no prescription, and no anti-aging clinic will print on their label. The most powerful rebuilding protocol for the human body over 40 is not a drug. It is a morning. Specifically, the kind of morning Japan has been practicing for centuries while the rest of the world rushed through it. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to overhaul the first 90 minutes of your day. Warm water before anything else. Step outside into morning light. Move your body for 10 minutes. Splash cold water on your face. Sit in stillness for 5 minutes. Eat a slow, protein-forward breakfast with miso, seaweed, fermented vegetables, and ginger tea. Drink matcha instead of coffee on an empty stomach. Set one clear intention before the day hijacks your attention. And say good morning to someone who matters. That's it. That's the protocol. Ancient in origin. Extraordinary in biology. Completely free. And available to you tomorrow morning. After 40, every morning is either working for your biology or against it. Japan's 25 morning habits work for it, relentlessly, cumulatively, and with scientific precision that Western medicine is only now beginning to fully document. Drop a comment below with the morning habit you're starting tomorrow. Share this with someone over 40 who deserves to know this. Subscribe. Because there is much more of this coming. Your rebuild starts tomorrow morning.